Dreams of flight. Michelle used to have dreams. When she was a child, she dreamt that one day she would be a famous pilot. She would soar through the sky, flying all around the world. She didn't know how she would make money. She just thought famous people made money just by being famous. As she grew older, she had dreams of being a skydiving instructor. She would go skydiving and take people with her. She would fall from places like Mount Kilimanjaro, New York City, Teotihuacan. She would see the world. She thought she could make money taking people to conquer their fears, while she herself would have the time of her life. But life is never as simple as that. When Michelle was 15, her mother died, leaving her and her two siblings and her father alone. Her father was poor, and Michelle needed a job to afford a car when she could start driving. Michelle took a job at a local grocery store. She would work every day after school. She would work every evening. She would work every weekend. She still dreamed of flying, and she wanted to be a stewardess when she turned 18, but that was a few years away. She tried every day at school, kept her grades high. If she wanted to be a skydiving instructor, she thought she needed perfect grades. She didn't really know why, it just seemed like the world required nothing but perfection. On her 17th birthday, Michelle learned that her father had been diagnosed with a fatal disease. The doctor said he would only live another 2 years if he stayed healthy. Considering his habits, he would not likely live a single year. It was the first time she cried on her birthday. Her older brother was 19 and would graduate that year. Her younger sister was only 10 and needed someone to look after her. Her brother told her in no uncertain terms that if he took her, she would end up in foster care. If she was lucky, her father wouldn't die until after she turned 18, so she could adopt her little sister. But she wasn't lucky. Just over a month before her 18th birthday, Michelle's father died in a car accident. He was drunk and wrapped himself around a local restaurant sign. The restaurant tried to sue Michelle and her brother for the damages, but it was hard to prove they had anything to do with what their father did. Since Michelle was underage, the court provided them with a lawyer and during the discussion, explained they didn't have insurance on the sign and replacing it would bankrupt them. Michelle could only watch as the owner broke down in tears as she stopped her own. As he promised, Michelle's brother was given the title of her sister's guardian. Almost despite her, her brother managed to find a young couple willing to take her almost immediately. While Michelle was still at school, her sister left her life entirely. Her brother also moved out of their house. He found a group of people willing to let him stay for cheap in exchange for delivering. Before he died, Michelle's father told her what to do to transfer the mortgage to her name. She was told to go to the bank and simply provide them with a death certificate, but the bank wouldn't allow her to take over the mortgage. They didn't trust her to pay back the loan. When she asked how much was left in the loan, they told her it was a lot, a full $30,000. Michelle tried to explain that she could still pay the normal amounts, but due to her lack of credit, they wouldn't accept her. And so, the bank took back the house and was going to exploit some other poor soul. Michelle had saved up enough money over the last couple of years, but most of it had been spent on her father's funeral. She only had enough money to decide whether to buy a car or all of the fees for an apartment. She still dreamed of traveling and chose to buy a van she found a listing for online. Lucky for Michelle, the seller's husband had cheated on her, and she was selling his van for cheap. Not looking a gift horse in the mouth, and not having much of a choice, Michelle bought the van. Not having the space for everything, Michelle only took the basics. Her mattress just barely fit, but not with the foundation. She fit as many of her clothes into bags as she could, and she did keep a few mementos, but only of her mother. Remembering the others would just be too painful. Everything else that she could, she sold. Not having the time to haggle, she took any first offer she was given. With the meager amount she managed to make, she bought a portable charger and portable solar panel that would allow her to use a microwave in her van for a few minutes a day. Her dreams of flying were the only things keeping her going at this point. Michelle still attended school. She wouldn't let her classmates know what was happening in her life. Even her best friends never suspected the gray that was growing in her chest. Finally reaching her 18th birthday, Michelle partied alone in her van, keeping warm at night under the blankets she grew up with. Her birthday celebration was to sleep early to avoid needing to eat. She still went to work as normal. She always parked somewhere where she wouldn't be recognized and would drive to work like everything was normal. She would do her job, go to her van, and find somewhere to park for the night. And she stayed like this for years. As graduation loomed, her guidance counselors told her to go to university. With her grades, she could get into any school she wanted. When she asked who would pay for it, they all told her to apply for scholarships. She spent many afternoons in the public library applying for scholarships. There just weren't that many for people who wanted to follow their dreams, though. By the time she graduated, she had managed to get the scholarships to afford a full year at a local community college. She didn't know what she was going to do for the second year. After everything she'd gone through, she decided to try her luck and would continue applying for scholarships in college. What she didn't count on was a steep drop in scholarships for college students. 3 years later, with only 1 year of college under her belt and nothing to show for it, Michelle was still working at the grocery store. She went months without getting a single scholarship and had just given up. After all, why keep trying when you get nothing but a brick wall? She hadn't spoken with her brother since what he did to their sister. Having bought a cheap phone, she read an article online and found out he was a wanted gang member. For a moment, she did consider trying to talk to him, but she remembered that she would likely never see her sister again because of him, and she decided against it. Michelle had gotten used to her life in a van. After she stopped going to college, her job offered her full-time hours, and she gladly accepted. She could have afforded to rent somewhere, but she was now used to her life. She had found a multi-level parking lot that only cost $50 a month, and was on the better side of the city. The guards all knew what she was doing, but they didn't say a word to her. On better days, she would park on the roof and would lay in the sun on a cheap hammock she found online. On rainy days, she would park in the middle of the lot to watch the rain hit the city streets, listening to the gentle purr of the city be muted as the sky cried in her place. Michelle had found friends at work and at school. None shared her interests, but they were at least a distraction for her. Sometimes she would ask to stay the night, feigning being too drunk or too tired to drive home. She still would never tell anyone how she really lived. Then one day, she learned that her entire store was closing and everyone was being laid off. Michelle was almost happy to hear the news. She had been saving money and was going to leave the city. She didn't know where she was going to go. She didn't know what she was going to do. All she knew was it was her time to leave, and this was the last straw. That evening, she had a last party with her friends. She stayed that night in a hotel she hadn't been to since before her mother died, and in the morning she drove out of the city with no particular direction in mind.